Greetings, my name is Tensor, and I was very jealous of all the Teslas and all the fancy cars, and my car is 22 years old, so I wanted to make it smart. So I started by trying to just access the car, enter the car or center locking, and also the ignition system. And for this, I thought that Fingerprint would be really a great solution for that. It's very cheap, inexpensive, accessible to my knowledge, and also just easy to install. So I started by looking for certain chips, and there's the Arduino platform that was created in 2008, based on C++ language, and I had practiced a lot using Arduinos over the years. Right now, there's new generation of Arduinos, maybe 1,000,000 times more powerful, called the Seeeduino, and that's a chip that's manufactured in Hong Kong. I've really enjoyed using this chip. You can program it with Python, C++ as well, and that's what I use as a brain of my car. It's this very tiny chip, costs about $3. There's also the fingerprint sensors for HZ Grow, also in China. And these fingerprint sensors are amazing. They're capacitive. Think of it as somebody draws a picture of you, right, with a pencil. That picture looks 2D, but really it's 3D for like a very micro or nano organism. There's hills and valleys, all of that. And that's the beauty of science, that it tells us, it expands the human experience to the micro and the macro world, and the beauty of computers. So that's what this chip does. It connects to the fingerprint sensor, and the fingerprint sensor has all these millions of capacitors, which see the hills and valleys of my fingerprint and really determines if it's the correct fingerprint or not. A couple of other components like relays. That's a good component to send it a computer signal and transfer that signal into to try to interact with another circuit that has a different voltage from what you're doing. So in other words, my computer is the Seeeduino is 5-volt operated, but the car is 12-volt operated. So what do you do to send signals in between those two circuits? You use relays. The hard part was to actually figure out how to hook the relays to my car. I built the system to be like the best word to use is parasite system. So it can all be removed. It's just like a decal on your car, but at the same time, it controls every single aspect of the car. And a friend of mine actually, who inspired me to do this, had built a drone, this tiny with this chip. So this chip is really amazing, and its capabilities are limitless. Application of this is to, it's definitely a technology that's being used now. It had fingerprint, capacitive fingerprint sensors were introduced in 2015 with the iPhone 5, but it's still being used now. So I think it's really reliable, and it can be used for a lot of things. I've been working with Dr. Alex Pennon at Utah Valley University, and in the past we've worked on a weapon. It's a CO2 gun, and one of the best ways to secure that was using fingerprint sensors. That's something we proposed and talked about. And here is just a shout out to Adafruit libraries. These are C++ written libraries to define, and this is the name of the library, Adafruit Fingerprint. If you don't know what a library is, it's a bunch of codes that are written and they don't have to change. They define every aspect of the peripherals you're using in a certain language. And once you call this library, you can now start to call functions from that library and manipulate it to achieve your goal. And this is what I drew one night, and then I thought I could make this work. First, I went to the BMW dealership and I talked with them and looked at their books in their cellar until I found the circuits for my car, which were about 300 pages book. I studied all of it. And I figured out what wires I should tap into. And this is kind of like a rundown of how the circuit works. So you've got the brain up there, the Seeeduino, and the peripheral, which is the fingerprint sensor, a DC to DC converter to supply power to the brain, 5 volts, and to supply power to the relays as well, which is 5 volts, and it's getting 12 volts from the car. So it takes 12 volts from one side and spits out 5 volts from the other. And this is the array of relays, and they're connected to certain wires in the car. These colors are in German, Weiß, Schwarz, and Grün. So these colors, they are all standardized in German cars, and they were pinned to learn. And this is also kind of how the circuitry works. So this is for the mechanism, for the lock and unlock mechanism of the car. And these are the wires that I tapped into. And here for the ignition of the car as well, we got all these wires here, all these different colors. And you can see that there are these 4 wires up here. I also ran USB-C cables because I figured that these cables are really amazing. They already have 4 lines of, 2 lines for power, 2 lines for data. And that's, so I'm using a protocol called UART. And this protocol is how you connect the fingerprint sensor to the computer, the brain. And this is what I wrote about in the setup and the loop. The setup is a function that pretty much defines everything you need to know about the peripheral you're dealing with. By peripheral, I mean the fingerprint sensor. And this is the setup function where it just kind of tells me all the information about my fingerprint sensor, like how fast is it working right now, how many fingerprints are registered on it, and all of that. Something's breaking down. Yeah, this is the heart of the code, and this is a function that, when you call this function, it does the job of testing the fingerprint sensors again and again. You have to account for a lot of things. For instance, you have to account if you did it incorrectly. Here, if there's an error in communication, then you've done it incorrectly, and try again. And if there's somebody's trying to use a incorrect fingerprint, this function would, this if condition would also stop that and give you some red light warning. And there is like, if unknown error, normally, I don't know, like neutrino or something. And then also, I guess blue is the color of good stuff. So once it's, once you put correct fingerprint, the color becomes blue. So also I'm working on Apple HomeKit protocol. This protocol is pretty amazing because you can control a lot of things using just Siri, using a command from your mouth. But these things are super expensive. So the whole theme of this presentation is affordability. It's very affordable systems, open source. It's all on my GitHub. You can access it. And this, what I'm working on now, that works with Apple HomeKit. Here's the demonstration. That is not working. So you can see I'm using Siri, Apple HomeKit, that's manufactured in-house in my bedroom to control the garage door. Again, all of these are very affordable, with $2, $5. This is a demonstration of how the whole system works. And you're welcome to hop on Instructables and start building your own thing. And please share with me, and I would love to see your comments and how you would advance this project. These are my references. you very much.
Okay. And don't go away yet.
Yeah, questions?
Questions for Tensor?
Yeah, what would you say was the most difficult part of that whole project?
Yeah, threading a wire through the door jamb. Actually, the difficult part was reading the car's specific wiring.
Okay.
Yeah, it's written in a language that's non-human and non-scientific.
German engineer language.
Correct. In other words.
So what are all the things that you can automate and control with like Siri? Then you shut the garage door, you have the fingerprint for like locking and unlocking the car. Did you also mention that starting and stopping the car could
Correct. Yes, ignition.
be just automated by the fingerprint or by Siri or?
Both. Yeah. So the forgot the English word for it, but the prospects are limitless. You can even watch for a leak in your house. Definitely security is something I focused on for this project.
So how does it work? So if you wanted to start the car,
Yeah.
would you first have to unlock it with a fingerprint and then talk to Siri to start it, or is there another fingerprint sensor on the inside of the car rather than on the door handle that you would use?
The car would have 4 fingerprint sensors. All of this is in action because I'm working in grad school now, but there's a proof of concept. So we have 4 fingerprint sensors, 3 for the 2 doors and the trunk, and 1 for the ignition. And you just, if you wanna turn the car on, you kind of just put your finger on the fingerprint sensor and it turns on. That's a 23-year-old car. And also, you can be in your bed and turn your car on by saying, hey, yes, turn the car on. Don't want to activate your phones.
How does the setup work? That is, like, how do you, let's say you just bought this car, how do you program your fingerprint or your voice
Right.
into it?
So I've chosen the hardest car you can hack into. So I think any other car would be easier than this because you have to figure out certain wiring in the car that controls the ignition and also controls the center locking system. And if you tap into these wirings correctly and just put the amount of voltage required for the amount of time required, you can do anything. And that's how this system works. If you put the amount of voltage required at that exact amount of time for 2 seconds or 3 seconds. So once you figure this out, you're able to really replicate the whole systems of the car. And when I build something like this, I like to keep everything original intact. Obviously, I would leave the key in the car and hide it, but the fingerprint would be how it works. And if I just want to remove it, I can literally just rip it out with hand, rip the wires out, and rip all my fingerprint sensors out, and the car is back to normal without any change. And that was also quite challenging to keep everything intact in case my system fails, because I'm a manufacturer. As a matter of fact, I went to wash my car and everything broke down.
Go ahead.
So you said you left the key in the car. Was that to disable like the immobilizer and stuff like that?
Yeah, to disable the anti-theft system that the car has, but I think my system is pretty loud as well and can always replicate the anti-theft system of the car. But for this specific car, the car cannot turn on unless the key is in ignition. There is a certain coil, I think it's electric induction, which they used in 2000. I don't know how. I don't think that technology existed back then. But yeah, the key has to be there because it has a small chip that tells the car the key is there. And I can hide all of this under the steering wheel. It's inaccessible. And there's only the fingerprint sensor. And if the fingerprint sensor doesn't work, all the alarms would go on, the lights, the sirens, all of that. If somebody's trying to turn on the car with the incorrect finger.
So there was no way to defeat or maybe you didn't want to, but could you have tried to defeat the key?
Oh yeah, that's pretty easy to do actually. It just takes a little bit of drilling, and I don't want to change the state of the art of the car, but can definitely be done. Can definitely get rid of the whole thing, the whole key and the key coil and that security system that locks the steering wheel can easily be removed.
Awesome. Yes.
Do you have any trouble, like, I assume it's being powered off the 12-volt battery, right?
Correct.
So do you have any trouble with it, like ambient power draw or anything
That's-
like that? So do you have to start your car up every other day to make sure that you recharge the battery?
That's the beauty of these chips, that they consume up to 10 milliamperes. That is nothing. That would never drain the battery if it's on for years. These electrical signals that are being sent are on the range from 10 to 30 milliamperes. So it does not really drain the battery, it does not affect the battery. Perhaps I could make a graph about it.
So you mentioned, so you're a student at Utah Valley.
Correct.
What is your major?
My major is physics with the mathematical emphasis and math minor.
Okay, so not electrical engineering.
Not
Not
at all,
computer
this is
science.
just for fun, but I can always talk to you about the time, how it's a dimension, and how it's a manifold of the tensor matrices.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you went to the BMW dealership because you needed this book of
Yeah.
wiring. Did you tell them what you were up to?
Well,
Did they offer to hire you?
I think I have people
You should go back. You might want to think about that instead of grad school.
Correct, yeah, I made a friend there who was a mechanic, and she helped me to go in the back doors and get that book that nobody had accessed in like 10 years.
Awesome. Any other questions for Tensor? Really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.